Most people think dismissive avoidants are just cold, detached, or simply don't care. The truth is, they are more often than not stuck in something known as functional freeze. This means that they are not actually emotionless. They are simply numbed out by a nervous system that's been running on survival mode for years. And in today's video, we are going to unpack what functional freeze really is, how it silently sabotages connection between people, and how avoidants or their partners can start melting that freeze to finally feel safe showing up for love. Now, before I dive in, I do have another video that's sort of a part one to this that really explains the nervous system in more detail and co-regulation and what you can do as a partner. Loving a dismissive avoidant, if you just want to learn more about this concept, I will link that video down below. But for today specifically, I want to dive in to what functional freeze is and how it's really affecting dismissive avoidance as a whole so that you have context for this stuff, that you can actually understand why this is happening and what you can do about it. So first and foremost, we have two branches of the nervous system. We have sympathetic, which is your fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, and then parasympathetic. But within parasympathetic, which is that rest and digest mode, even this aspect almost has another two branches that it splits into. And this is one branch known as the ventral vagal, or safe part of the parasympathetic nervous system. And you can think of this mode as being the rest, digest, relate, and create mode. And when somebody's in ventral vagal mode, they often feel grounded, they feel open, they feel regulated, they feel comfortable in social interactions, they feel comfortable being themselves, and they usually feel like they are in now their authenticity. Then we have dorsal vagal, which is the shutdown branch of the parasympathetic nervous system. And this is often related to immobilization, survival shutdown. When escape feels like it's impossible, somebody will escape in terms of shutting down. They'll escape from the world by just retreating, essentially. And you can think of this as being the collapse, freeze, numbness, dissociation mode for the nervous system. And when somebody is in dorsal vagal shutdown mode, they often feel hopeless. They feel like they've disappeared. They feel like derealization can occur. But this isn't all that functional freeze is. So we're going to come back to this in a second. But some general details of dorsal vagal shutdown and what it feels like to be in this is low energy, slower heart rate, poor digestion, shallow breathing, deep numbness, emptiness, brain fog, disconnection, isolation, immobility, or feeling frozen. And oftentimes, what's essentially taking place is dismissive avoidant attachment styles basically move from dorsal vagal shutdown at the end of a socially taxing day because they haven't had proper nervous system co-regulation with others growing up. And so they don't know how to co-regulate with others as an adult. And so they go from environment to environment feeling like everything is taxing their nervous system, taking away from their ability to regulate. And they'll often retreat and go into the shutdown mode a lot of times when they're home from work. And so this is where you're seeing dismissive avoidants always say, like, oh, I'm so busy, I can't show up. A lot of times they're too busy, literally in dorsal vagal shutdown, like literally not being able to show up and relate or connect. And this is where you're going to see them do things like completely ignore messages, not talk, because the amount of effort it takes for them to try to talk or communicate from that mode, it's like too much. It's like if you've ever been in this mode, I'm sure everybody listening to this right now has been in this mode at some point in time where you're just like so shut down and you're really in this place of just needing to, you've retreated so strongly that you're just, the idea of trying to do something functional or productive from that space just almost feels like it's not even possible. And dismissive avoidants spend a lot of time here. Fearful avoidants can spend a good bit of time here as well. And all people can enter into this state, like even securely attached individuals, if they are way overcommitted or they're, in the midst of some really busy thing, everybody can go into this state from time to time. And unfortunately, a lot of our society is kind of conducive to people going into that state from time to time. But this is very common for dismissive avoidants to spend a lot of their spare time here. And this is where they will cancel plans, not follow through on things, change things at the last minute because they so frequently enter into this state because their nervous system has such limited vagal tone, which is essentially our body's ability or our nervous system's ability to switch from, this perceived and stressed environment back into a safe state of being. And because the dismissive avoidance struggles with that a lot more and didn't have a lot of healthy co-regulation to feel like they could do that around people growing up, it basically puts them at this constant deficit. Okay. So that's a really important thing to just recognize first. However, then we have functional freeze. Okay. And this comes from a lot of Dr. Stephen Porges and polyvagal theory. But essentially, functional freeze mode is where a person feels psychologically and emotionally frozen, but is still outwardly functional. So it's almost like they still have this like internal dorsal vagal mode, and they can go to work, perform tasks, but generally they feel numb, disconnected, flat. And you'll see a lot of times that when people are in this mode of being, they're essentially in the state of existing, right? You can think of we have different levels of living. We have existing, where you kind of go to work, do everything you're supposed to do, come home, maybe eat some food, go back to sleep, start your work the next day, and you're just in this space of only being able to show up for the bare minimum. Then we have this sense of like, no, 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 we're actually thriving, right? We're actually showing up and we're able to plan our lives and think about things we want to do and be intentional about how we spend our time, and we're feeling fulfilled by the things we invest ourselves in. And when we're in that healthy space, that's more associated with ventral vagal, right? So going back to this, right? We have parasympathetic nervous system, the two branches, dorsal vagal and ventral vagal. Ventral vagal is that healthy social space. Dorsal vagal is that complete shutdown mode. But then you have sympathetic, which is what we constantly hear like fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And functional freeze is essentially almost this combination in a way of being in sympathetic mode, but having this sort of internal dorsal vagal shutdown. So you'll see that somebody is essentially in this space of feeling this restless energy, these jitters, this anxiety, but internally feeling like numb, disconnected, flat, and essentially feel like you're doing life, but you're not feeling like you're in existence, right? And functional freeze, you'll see a lot of the times there's this outward functioning, but internally a lot of times energy is low. And a lot of times when somebody's in functional freeze mode for prolonged periods of time, they have a lot of difficulty feeling. And so your body is activated, but the nervous system is essentially not in this like full mobilization. So there's still this aspect of being in this freeze mode. And so what ends up taking place is you'll see, and you see this a lot with dismissive avoidance, things like dismissive avoidance spend all this time alone, but it's like they will watch a television show, right? Because they're kind of like retreated, but they'll be scrolling through social media all the time at the same time. It's like this restlessness, but then not the inability to really commit or show up and be present with anything. And it's almost like there's this chronic inner resistance to what it means to be present in your environment. And as a result of that, there's, a lot of emotional neglect of oneself. There's a lot of like shame that often comes with that because people are very hard on themselves when they're in that mode. And there's generally this feeling of being in this chronic overwhelm with no real relief. And, it can cause somebody to feel like they can't even access their own emotions. They feel a difficulty concentrating, making decisions, connecting to their sense of joy. And you'll see a lot of times that like poor circulation comes as a result, low energy, poor digestion. I mean, so many aspects of this come into play. So I'm going to tell you some actual exercises that you can partake in that will help change and heal this. But before I do, I just want to let you know for a very limited time, because this is such an important topic, and we have had a course out here for like 4 years about nervous system regulation and healing for each attachment style. You can actually check out our course called Somatic Healing and Nervous System Regulation. You can check it out for $19 only, just for a couple of days. We're running this. Okay, so I'll put a link down below. Put it for $19 because I want everybody to be able to access this. It's literally game changing when it comes to healing, and it's one of our 6 key pillars of healing your attachment style. There's other really crucial ones, but it's definitely in the top 4 of 6. So I am putting that link down below if you want to check it out. Again, only $19, all about how to heal your nervous system, how to regulate, how to actually upgrade some of the things that are happening here. But let's talk about some things you can start with right now for functional freeze specifically. So what do we actually do to get out of this mode? Well, generally, because in a sense, functional freeze essentially has elements of dorsal vagal with elements of sympathetic nervous system, you have to target both of those aspects of oneself. And so this means being able to target the part of you that's trapped in that, restless energy, that fear. And that can be through things like, breath work, meditation, making sure that you're really regulating, coming back to, practice being present in your body. And that can be through deep breathing, because when we're breathing deeply, we're actually signifying to our brain and body that like we are safe. That can also be practicing mindfulness activities, things like that. But at the same time, while we're trying to regulate that nervousness, right, from that sympathetic nervous system mode, which really presents a lot of times as that restlessness, at the same time, we want to be able to bring that dorsal vagal shutdown mode out of that, right? So we have to be taking small actionable steps towards coming out of this complete shutdown internally. And so that we do really well to do sort of titrated experiences there. Things like, going through grounding senses, through textures, smells, warmth, cold, weighted blankets, things that bring us back into our body, but then combining that with gentle movement, things like yoga, stretching, going for a long walk. So we're essentially getting our body mobilized again, but discharging that sympathetic nervous system energy. And by targeting both of those branches, we start to be able to feel some healing. Now, there can also be a lot of really interesting things where people talk about nutritional support. I mean, this is something that I absolutely am not going to pretend like I'm some kind of expert on because I'm not a functional medicine doctor. But I will say, having done a lot of research and reading about functional medicine and just seeing how important it is, you can take something called an organic acids test and see if you have any nutritional deficiencies, things like that, or definitely consult with your personal provider. But a lot of times there's some research showing that people stuck in functional freeze mode may be magnesium deficient, maybe benefiting by having supplements like omega-3s, L-theanine, adaptogens like rhodiola, ashwagandha, or probiotics to really improve gut-brain axis support. But that's something to have a conversation with your personal health care provider about. That's not something to take advice from me around particularly, just interesting to research about for sure. And as you're starting to see your ability to discharge that sympathetic energy by doing grounding exercises, by practicing being back in your body through things like mindfulness, meditation, breath work, but also mobilize your body through things like light movement, you can climb out of this functional freeze mode. And it can actually have this huge impact in regards to a dismissive avoidant. But I want to tell you something that's probably the most important thing here, which is the fact that you can do those things all day long, okay? But our nervous system does not only respond to things taking place in our external environment. It's not just about our external environment, it's also about our internal conditioning. And that means if you have a lot of core wounds, like around being defective, emotionally unsafe, weak, helpless, if you're vulnerable or open up to somebody, if you have a lot of core wounds in your own subconscious programming, your conditioning, the way that you see the world, you're going to be triggered more often and your nervous system's going to get out of whack more often as a result. So healing is not only addressing things from that lens, healing is also our body's ability to show up and really do the internal work on our conditioning that causes to overperceive or misperceive threats, along with know how to anchor and regulate our nervous system. Both branches must go together. We actually have that somatic processing and nervous system regulation course that really dives into the roots of these things, fully available for only $19. It's usually $250, but I just thought this was such an important thing. And we've had this course out for like 4 years. And I just want to make sure that people can access it because it's so meaningful in regards to huge steps towards your healing. So again, you can check that out for only $19 just for a limited time. We're doing this for like 2 or 3 days. I'll put the link down below. I hope you enjoy that. And if you want more content like this on this channel, let me know in the comments down below. And also we'll be talking more about the nervous system throughout this week as it relates to each attachment style. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the future videos. Thanks for watching.